Good afternoon. Two things. One, I saw that this creator, his name is Jay Wisdom. I saw that this creator made a follow up to his first video, and that first video was a psychoanalysis of David, and it said the warning signs that nobody saw. And when I was getting ready to do this video and see what's going on, I saw that he made a follow up video. I think it was about like what, a day prior, and my assumptions kind of said he probably said something that did not go over well in terms of talking about this because this is my first time checking out Jay Wisdom. And also, when you do a psychoanalysis about something, I can assume that this is, well, not only is that this is a very, very sensitive topic, of course it is, and also obviously people have an emotional tie to said topic, and sometimes in a context like this you are treading a line when you're doing a psychoanalysis on somebody that has done something as heinous and disturbing and disgusting as David did. One thing I do want to try and, I don't even want to use understand. I'm just trying to get to the point, like, how did we come to this? Because one, the video says the warning signs that nobody saw, and that automatically makes me think, like, what warning signs can somebody pinpoint and also nip in the bud so something like this doesn't happen? And I'm not saying this as like a way to stop David from ruining his life. I'm trying to say this like, stop Celeste being preyed upon, if that makes sense. Because I believe in the last video I was talking about, or I said something about some people, pretty much what I was talking about is like, what are the proper steps to prevent something in the beginning stages of something so the next stage doesn't happen? And you would think obviously if somebody sees, David with this young ass girl, to say that shit is fucking weird and you need to stop talking to her. Obviously, even if I don't even know if that actually happened, I'm under the assumption that it didn't, and he was just able to just do this for this long time. And this is one of the reasons why I do want to watch this video and just see what is being said, because I am somebody that wants to try to understand how do we get this far? Like, how? And I don't even want to say it as a way to justify, because I'm not justifying this shit. I'm trying to figure out what are warning signs that we can see so we can stop stuff like this happening. Because I don't believe this is the first time. I believe back in the day there was like another artist that did some shit like this. I forgot his name, but I remember 3 some odd years ago that this happened. And I can literally understand, I can see that this happening so many times. This is just the one time where this has gotten this big to where it is this whole, and I'm sad to say this, like, it's a whole, it turns into a spectacle. And that was one of the things that I was kind of afraid of, because again, rest in peace to Celeste, you did not deserve that. But sometimes in a story or a case like this, the perpetrator becomes the main focus when the main focus needs to be the victim who was preyed upon, and also her life was taken, her innocence was taken, every adult failed her. So in terms of a psychoanalysis, I'm, I guess, gaining knowledge of a possible think piece, and also we're going to check out the second video. So this is from Jay Wisdom. Depending on how this video goes, I'm going to hold my shout out, because, I love to shout out people who are like watching, and this is probably going to be a long one. So let's see, because at the end of the day, I don't know this nigga's origin. Literally, he just popped up in front of me one day and it's like, okay, who's this guy? Okay. What the fuck? Oh my gosh, like, it's just, this is that. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the host of this show are for authentic, honest, and entertaining purposes. Unless you don't think I'm entertaining. I repeat, this is my opinion. I am not telling you how or what to think or feel, but I do encourage you to speak your mind and have conversations. Just don't do too much. Also, this video is brought to you by Sebastine's Patreon, where you can access over 1,000 videos of exclusive content. If you want to subscribe and support this amazing community, click the link in the description below, and thank you for everything. Enjoy the video.
A murder that has become one of the most discussed crime cases of recent times is that of David Anthony Burke, who went by the stage name David. David was at the peak of his career. He dropped a high-charting debut album, he had millions of social media followers, and was significantly wealthy for a man only 20 years old. However, in September of 2025, detectives discovered the body of a 14-year-old girl that had been missing for months, Celeste Rivas Hernandez, in the trunk of his Tesla, decomposed, dismembered, and abandoned.
Fucking
And
disgusting.
for months, people debated on whether they believed that this innocent-looking, clean-shaven young man with a melodic voice could do the things he'd been accused of. But now that David has been arrested for murder, and the prosecution have documented their evidence, the likelihood that this was some sort of setup has been significantly reduced.
A setup. Okay, well, for one, I would like people to understand, like, just because you have a baby face and just because you can sing a nice tune does not mean you are incapable of doing some shit. That's one. Like, that whole talk of like, oh, look at how he looks. There's no way he would do that. Come on, bro. No. That's not flying. That's not flying.
It became evidenced that David had a physical relationship with Celeste while she was still a child. And when they broke up and she allegedly threatened to expose the relationship to ruin his career, the prosecution believed he took matters into his own hands to protect what he'd built. But when you add the context that he made music constantly that included themes of blood, violence, and a romance that ends in tragedy, it's caused a lot of people to suspect that this outcome was something David always wanted. However, I'm not here to discuss theory and conspiracy. I'm here to clinically answer two main overarching questions. How did David's life engineer him to become someone capable of potentially murdering and dismembering a child?
Okay.
And if he did, then what mental mechanisms allowed him to carry on with life after the fact, knowing the body of the girl he was once intimate with was decomposing in his car?
See, this is something that I would like to see. Because at the end of the day, like, we don't fuck with evil, cuz evil shit, we don't fuck with that. But sometimes people can put away, like, bro, I don't even want to know what the fuck, why he even got this way. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn why he did this. I'd send that nigga to the chair. However, thinking of stuff in a different type of perspective, what I was saying in the beginning was like, what are the signs that people can catch so this doesn't happen to protect potential victims in the future?
It's easy to just label him as pure evil and move on, but as a student of psychology, I find it crucial that we understand what happened to him in childhood, what were the warning signs, and figure out the why that surely exists in this story. There's a lot of questions I've seen online that I think I have the ability to answer by the end of this video. Answers that will give you a genuine understanding into the mind and psychology of David Anthony Burke.
I put her in the car. She was like, David, this song is too violent. You talking about killing people in your music? No, not my son. I was like, wait, I might be onto something.
All right. Okay. What the fuck?
Let's start from the beginning. So, you're a New Yorker.
New Yorker, Queens, New York.
What are your parents like? Are they musicians?
Not at all. My dad is a litigator for a law firm. My mother was a teacher. She doesn't do it anymore, but she does notary now.
David Anthony Burke was born in Queens, New York, to Colleen and Dawood Burke, two Christian parents that seemingly would give him a tough and controlled upbringing.
Everything we played in the house, music-wise, was just Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, gospel music, like classical stuff. Instrumentals only. Like, we didn't listen to any other music. There was no like Lady Gaga and all the popular artists everybody was listening to. We never could listen to that because my parents just wouldn't let us.
Well, I can understand why you could not listen to Lady Gaga and your parents are Christian.
It was just like straight classical stuff. It was literally nothing. It was all gospel and like classical, Mozart, Bach, like all that type of stuff. Because my parents wanted me to be really smart. They never like talked about college or anything like that, but they always wanted me to be very intellectual, very put together, have an idea what I'm doing, but they never like listened to music like that at all.
Trying to control what your kids listen to and the content they consume isn't necessarily harmful in and of itself, but if a kid is going to school and has no level of cultural relatability, it can cause feelings of being excluded, which in turn affects his socialization. If everyone got to access music and it became a point of discussion he couldn't involve himself in, it might have led to feelings of envy, and instead of David accepting this, he tried to find a way around it.
Did your parents put sort of a cap on what you couldn't listen to in the
Nah,
house?
I was sneaking
It wasn't
around.
like that.
I had this little iPod. I used to sneak. I got it with me right now too. I still got these. I used to
Oh
sneak around with the
my
iPod
God.
Touch. I used to sneak around with the iPod Touch and download things off iTunes and stuff like that.
The sneaking around his parents like this is consistent with reactance theory, proposed by Jack Brem in 1966. When perceived behavioral freedom is restricted, individuals are motivated to reclaim it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I never knew it was an actual theory. I just thought it was like common sense in terms of this, because like if you restrict a child, bro, the thing is like restricting children from doing stuff, in my opinion, I don't have kids, but in my opinion, and I'm a kid who like literally rebelled against my parents and stuff like that. Like restricting them from doing stuff, I don't know many stories of people going that same straight and narrow that instilled your parents into. If there are any types of things that, you know, that happen, I would love to know about it. But in my brain, I think common sense was like, if you restrict your kids, especially music, if you restrict your kids from listening to certain types of music, especially if you have this certain type of preconceived notion about, let's say, secular music, I think it's more natural that your kids are going to rebel, because kids naturally, or I would think a mind that wants to learn more. And if you want a mind to be intellectual, that mind is going to ask you, why can't we do this one day? You know?
In these situations, the forbidden fruit, which for David would have been music, becomes more desirable, and the individual tries to acquire it by any means, even if it includes secrecy. Now, it's not the behavior itself that's necessarily significant, but the pattern it establishes. That authority is to be managed through concealment rather than confronted directly. This pattern would then reoccur later for his adult life.
Okay, I'm picking up what he's putting down. And also, the same thing that I'm picking up what he's putting down is not always 100% in terms of, like we all know, us listening to music that our parents didn't want to is not going to lead us to killing our victim, you know? So these are one of the things that I'm trying to think about when it's like, okay, how, you know, a question that I do have is how many things or traits that we all have in the mind of someone who is evil. You know, like people like to call people like narcissists, all this other shit. But like 2% of the world are actual narcissists. It's not enough people in the world who are narcissists that all these people are saying are narcissists, but that does not negate the fact that people have narcissistic traits.
It didn't help David that his private school life in New York also consisted of bullying and teachers picking on him. So he had an uneasy time both at school and at home.
I hated New York at that point. Like,
why did you
I didn't
hate
like
it?
my school. I was at a
'Cause
private
it's-
school, and they treated me so horribly, dude.
Why?
It was insane. I don't know. All the teachers had it out for me. My little brother could testify to that too. Dude, they just had it out for me all the time. I don't know what it was. I would just do nothing to nobody, and the teachers would just pick on me and bully me for no reason, bro. I wanted to leave that place so bad.
And he got his wish as they moved to Houston, Texas, and he found it slightly better at his new school. But he was a kid that didn't really seem to find anything that stuck. His parents tried to get him into music, but it wasn't stimulating enough for him at that time.
She put me into piano lessons when I was 7, and then I quit that after a week. She was like, okay, I'm not gonna pay for it if you don't like it. Quit that. I went into she put me in a church choir when I was 8. Quit that. And then I was in middle school band when I was in 7th grade. I played the flute, and I quit that.
But he never developed into a conventionally social child. He describes himself as a people watcher rather than a member of a friend group, sitting apart in cafeteria settings and constructing fictional narratives around classmates that they were unaware of.
At school, before I was homeschooled, like middle school, elementary, I would look at these kids, like at cafeteria, at lunch was like my playground, like my brain's playground. Like there's so many different kids and they're all doing something different. I would just sit there and I'm a people watcher. I would just inspect them and like write about them and stuff like that. And I kind of brought these characters to life. that were inspired by my classmates. So every time I would write like a short story, I'd have these different classmates in these stories, and they would never know. It's like different names and everything, but they were inspired by my classmates.
Hey, bro, I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't like this shit because, hold on. I don't like this. Actually, hold on, cuz. I don't like this because I'm seeing some similarities to me growing up. I don't know if y'all remember. It's gonna be probably new people here, but there was some things that I was saying about my life and growing up that I'm finding similarities about this dude, and it's not making me feel good. Like going to piano, being in a choir, not really sitting with people at lunch, being a people watcher, and having the people around me are like characters in a movie or a show that I always wanted to come to life in. I don't know if y'all remember, but I remember I said in a video that I used to draw movie posters and have the credits of all the people that I knew. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if that's the case, I still was not on this type of shit that he ended up being, or actually, I believe at this time he was already on. So where the fuck did this come from? Like literally, where did this come from? Like this is actually like scaring me because where did this come from? Like in middle school, I was bullied, like a bunch of shit, all that. Okay, hold on. This is feeling eerie. I ain't gonna lie to you.
This preference to observe people and create these stories was an early marker that he had a natural tendency to see people as subjects for analysis rather than reciprocal social partners. Combined with his bullying in New York, it suggests he felt more inclined to exist on the edge of...
Okay, I would say in that sense, I was not seeing people as test subjects. I just thought it was like creative and cool to do that. That's not what I was, no.
Social bubbles rather than in them, present but not integrated, watching but not connecting. He says he began writing poetry in the 5th grade and pursued anime, gaming, and creative fiction from a young age.
Okay.
Yeah, ever since I was young, I really just liked anime, gaming, and poetry. That's it. I remember reading my first manga when I was in 5th grade.
How does somebody come into anime? Like at a young age? I do want to know. And this is like a tangent question because I'm not trying to like build off of what the fuck he's saying, but it kind of seems like I'm building off of it. How does somebody come into anime at a young age? Because sometimes I wish that I did and that I wasn't 26 tapping into anime. Like that's very interesting to me because my best friend has been loving anime since he was like a young tyke. You feel me?
Dragon Ball, Tokyo Ghoul, and see these fantasy characters with powers and all that. That weren't superheroes, and that inspired me to start writing and write my own stories about them.
But just in case his parents couldn't give him any more reason to resent them, they took him out of public school, the only place he was getting any sort of socialization, the place where he was letting his imagination run wild. Okay. And they instead placed him on an isolated homeschool curriculum.
Transitioning from public school to homeschool is tragic. The first 2 years was tragic.
Tragic.
I was asking to go back to school almost every day. My brother too.
Was the decision to move from public schooling to homeschooling a difficult one?
It was, and it wasn't mine, it was my parents.
So there's 2 different types of homeschooling in America. There's like group homeschooling, where it's parents that don't want their kids to be in public school environments, but they still want them to be in social groups. So they have you have homeschool kids that meet once a week at a specific place, and they play like extracurricular activities like basketball and stuff like that, so they can socialize, and they do the work on paper. And then there's a second homeschooling where it's just strictly on computer. That's what I did.
They didn't let him enroll on the socialized model involving group meetings with peers, but a fully computer-based, home-based program with no structured peer contact whatsoever.
Is there anybody who was like homeschooled in the comments? How was that like? Because I remember in elementary school, there were a couple people who were quote unquote homeschooled. I don't know. This is my first time hearing about socialized homeschool. I can assume that the socialized homeschool was the person that I was in school with in middle school and elementary school. But still, I guess in my school, people treated homeschool kids as like just mythical creatures who deserve no type of love. You know what I'm saying? I remember one day there was this girl who was homeschooled, and like it was like a dress down day. It was like dress down day, and I thought it was so cool because like her dress down whatever was like to put a tail on the end of her or at the top of her pants, and she was like a fox for a day. Like I thought that shit was pretty fucking cool, but people were being so mean, and it was just like, why? Like why, bro? Like this shit never made sense to me. And it's like, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I grew up in PG County, Maryland, so you can already know how PG County, Maryland, in the early 2000s to 2010s was. It was kind of rough, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I would say rough in terms of like mental stuff, especially if you weren't in the cool kids crowd. But just like I never understood why people pick on people who are seemingly different. I guess that's like a hive mentality, and me and my adult brain is thinking like, okay, they probably just picked on them because they thought that shit was cool. But like I will never forget. I'm not gonna say her name because I don't know what she's doing now, but it was like the tail, like the tail that she had. It was cool as shit to me, bro. And she had like ears and shit. Like I forgot what I asked her, like, who is she supposed to be? But I thought this shit was cool, bro. And people were just picking on her. Like I thought this shit was so mean. And I was somebody that got picked on for having a fucking peanut head, like Craig of the Creek and stuff like that. And or like not having good fashion, good shoes, or being fat. Like I remember all that other stuff. But even at that point, Okay, I ain't gonna lie to you. Some shit that haunts me, like my nickname in middle school was Jiggles because I was very chubby. Like very, very chubby. But even in that sense, I still didn't understand why people did not think having a tail, just a foxtail on the back of your, having a foxtail for, I think it was like a creator day or some shit. It was some type of dress down day. I thought it was like, I just can't put my head around it. I don't know. I wonder how she's doing. Like that's,
From a developmental psychology standpoint, this is the most significant single environmental factor in his profile.
Right.
Erikson's 8th stage model identifies adolescents, approximately 12 to 18 years old, as the critical period for identity versus role confusion. The
Right.
developmental task of forming a stable, coherent sense of self through peer interaction, social experimentation, group belonging, and the feedback of others. Removing a child from that process during its peak window doesn't simply slow development, it redirects it, and they don't develop normally. And the main damage that came from that cutoff was socializing. None of his peers stayed in contact with him following the transition, and he was all alone.
I thought I had a lot of friends in middle school, and then after being homeschooled, nobody's hitting me up, nobody's asking me like, where am I at? Why am I not coming to school today? It made me question like, what is a real friend?
Yeah, same, nigga. It just sucks that you're a fucking predator.
And do I have any of those as well?
Especially when I was transitioning from public school to homeschooling and nobody like hit me up on Snapchat when I was like streaking everybody. My Snap score was like 250,000, bro.
And nobody hits you back?
Nobody, dude.
What the
That's what I'm saying.
Nigga saying, what the fuck? Okay, well, sorry that you got to. Okay, all right, hold on. I don't want to personify this shit. No.
Like nobody, like who? You not at school? Where'd you go, Dave? Like nobody. Like, did I really have friends? And
It'd be like
to
that.
question things.
Oh,
like,
totally.
About
It'd
your
be like
everyday
that.
life. It's like who's really there for you at the end?
I
It'd
mean,
be like
dude,
that.
homeschooling really takes a toll on a kid. Like,
Isolation.
yeah, and there's outlets like I know I made a couple friends now that were homeschooled, but they had like these groups that they would go to like bi-weekly and just to socialize. But I didn't have that. Like,
David would start to feel a growing disconnect between himself and his age mates, and an acute awareness of experiences that he was excluded from. I've gone through his TikTok, and this was clearly what hit him hardest. He was emotional seeing homeschool proposals. He has another post titled, What It Felt Like to Be a Homeschool Teen, and I won't play the audio for copyright reasons, but the lyrics go, everybody's falling in love and I'm falling behind, as he visibly shows his frustration at that fact. He missed out on having high school relationships, but had to watch everyone else get to have one through Snapchat. His former peers got to post relationship quotes and pictures with their partner, whilst he stayed at home, unable to do anything but watch. As the caption says, homeschool and being on social media 24/7 was not a good mix. In another post he says his superpower is never being able to express my feelings properly because I was homeschooled and had no social life for 5 years. And on another, he says, I was homeschooled all my life. I never got to experience any school dances.
Damn, he talk about that shit a lot. Oh my gosh.
When adolescents are denied normal peer socialization.
Okay, wait, quick question. Wait, hold on. How do y'all view people who go through stuff, and let's take this dickhead out of this equation. How do y'all see someone that speaks about quote unquote trauma that they have gone through, or quote unquote a hard upbringing that they've gone through, and also talk about it a lot of times? And I'm asking this because as somebody who like has gone through some trauma and tried to express it to people, and it turned into like, oh, that's pretty much like all I talk about. It's like, do y'all feel fatigue in that when somebody is expressing like, oh, I was this is why that, and they use this same type of quote, I'm using trauma like for a better term, this same type of trauma in what they're saying? Because I'm not gonna lie to you, him saying this back to back to back, and I guess it's just like I'm just like seeing this in my face right now, so this is why I have this perspective. But I don't know anybody in the comments who are talking about his TikToks and stuff like that back then, so I don't know. So that's why I'm asking, like, how do y'all, or you know what, how did y'all view that? What did y'all think about that? If y'all ever saw it, like him saying, oh, I was homeschooled, this is why. Oh, cause I was homeschooled, this is why. Oh, cause I was homeschooled, this is why. Oh, cause I was homeschooled, this is why. To where it turns into like a rhythm. I can assume that he probably did not put that shit so much, but from what I'm seeing is he did that a lot. I don't know.
The need for connection and belonging doesn't disappear. It finds alternative channels. In David's case, that channel was the internet. Specifically Fortnite, YouTube, Discord, TikTok, and eventually music. During his homeschooled years, David describes Fortnite as his primary social environment. He engaged in squad fields, which is where you're allowed to join games with strangers and talk to them if you have a headset and mic.
Okay.
And he allowed people to vent their personal problems to him.
Especially being homeschooled, not having a social life, right? So I'm on the game, I'm talking to all these random people, and they're talking to me about their life problems, you know, using video games to escape the real world as much as I am,
right,
and then living my life vicariously through them, and like writing songs about their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, why does he try to connect to? So okay, wait, I'm thinking. It seems, what I'm hearing right now, it seems more parasitic than trying to search for connection. And I'm saying it seems more parasitic because of hindsight. So I can't tell you how this would honestly feel in this moment. But like, again, as somebody who tried to connect with people and saying like, oh, I want to live my life vicariously through you because I feel like it's so much fun, or I feel like I can experience things. Like, that's one thing that I'd be thinking about, like, is experiences. But I don't know, like, I think it's because it's hindsight to where this feels like he's like latching on to experiences so much that he wants that to be his identity. And I don't know if we go further and further to where he talks about like gore and stuff like that, and I have reservations about that because I have stuff like experiences in that type of shit, like that type of that part of the internet. It's like, what switched? Like, what was the switch that manifested all of this for him to find this child and try to latch onto this child? Like, I would
go on Discord and I would go on Fortnite and I would go on like squad fills, and I just let people talk to me and just tell me about their lives. Because like most of these people that play video games the same way I do, they're going to it as an escape. So I was just being an open door and an open outlet for like my peers and my friends to kind of just like vent to me about different things in their like personal lives and stuff like that.
And I'm like 15, 14 at this time, so I don't know how to like be a therapist, right? But it's like I'm taking this information and all these different people talking to me about different like problems and situations. I'm like, wow, this is really what humans are like. Like these are humans.
The fact he says, wow, so this is what humans are like, these are humans, tells me that this was the only way David was understanding human psychology at that time.
Right.
This is a clinically unusual developmental pathway. Normally, an adolescent's model of human behavior is built through direct, embodied, reciprocal experience.
Okay.
Like friendship, conflict, romantic experience, loss,
Okay.
etc.
Right.
But David built his model of human psychology through a parasocial and semi-anonymous listening role, absorbing other people's problems through a gaming headset. This produces a specific kind of social intelligence, highly observational, empathically competent on an intellectual level, but fundamentally disembodied. He understands humans like a researcher understands subjects, not as a participant understands his peers.
Okay, I see where he's getting at. Okay. I see where he's getting at.
And that's going to be significant when evaluating his later relational behavior. So he was chronically online, seemingly addicted to video games, but being home alone that much allowed him to stumble across much worse vices. Later, in his own Discord server, David disclosed a sustained pattern of consuming gore content beginning at approximately 14 years old.
See, this is the shit that I'm pinpointing right now. Because if anybody remembers the internet back in, when did I start going on the internet? It was around 2010, 2009 to 2012, I believe. Whenever those like beheading videos came out, I think that was when I was seeing, this is when the internet was the wild, wild west. And there were just like sites where they just posted shit. And it was, you know how like, okay, so, because one thing that I'm trying to get at is like, how does somebody find themselves to get into gore content and just like stick to watching gore content? I remember, because for me, there's one thing that I hyper focus on. It's like, or one of those things, I don't know what it's called, but like, you know, like you see something and it's so devastating, but you can't look away. I don't know what that thing is called. And that was one of the things that I used to see. And I think it started after that movie 2012, where it was literally the end of the world movie. And like after like I saw that movie, I was finding, and it's probably weird, I don't know, but I was like 12. Or no, that came out in like 2009, I think. When did that movie come out? That movie, because I remember when I saw the trailer and I cried to my mom saying, "I don't want the world to end." I remember exactly where I was. When did this movie come out? Yeah, it came out in 2009. Okay, that came out in 2009. So I was like, I was like 9 or 10. So I was 9 or 10, and that was one of the that trailer of that movie was one of the things that got me to searching the internet for stuff, because I couldn't even fathom that something like this could happen. And I remember I came across the Boxing Day tsunami from 2004. This was before the Japan tsunami. Like I was like looking up natural disasters, and something about that, I just couldn't look away. I don't know what that is, and I don't know why, but then there were like things like, you know how like the YouTube algorithm gives you a random fucking video and it's like talking to you? Of course it's not like obviously talking to you, but there's like a where you can feel like something staring at you and you're trying to avoid it. There was something I saw on YouTube, I remember, that was very, very graphic. I forgot the name of the dude. He used to do like claymations, and it was a claymation of The Simpsons tied into the movie You're Next. And it was like the most gruesomest shit that I've ever seen in my life. And it was one of those things where like I could not stop watching it, but it like gave me nightmares and everything like that. And also, I also think, because I think my dad made me watch like horror movies and stuff like that, but that's besides the point. Or maybe it's not besides the point, but like stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out, how does somebody get into gore? Because I would think searching the internet around the late 2000s, early 2010s, bro, you found the most craziest shit you have ever seen. And sometimes you can't look away. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you can't. I'm trying to figure out with this nigga. It was he's over talk about cartel executions when he was 14. Cause I remember beheadings back then too, but that was when I was in high school and people were sharing that shit, and that's when Twitter was like the craziest thing ever. And he's talking about Live Leak. I never went to Live Leak, but I hear people talking about Live Leak. Obviously, I don't watch none of that stuff now because but I'm just trying to think. Somebody said gore is what makes something serious real. And he said he uses it to desensitize himself. But why? He said he used to be addicted to watching gore. You got to the point where I don't even cringe when I see it anymore. But then it was like, I remember laughing at one point, it got bad. And that was also something that I saw. Like, oh, another thing was Final Destination. I have never watched a full Final Destination movie because those were like the things that personified. But looking at somebody who like laughs at stuff like this and uses this stuff to desensitize himself, like why do you need to desensitize yourself though? That's the thing. Why do you need to? And I don't know how I'm coming off to you all, but I was a very curious kid with a free range of the internet, which was that was not a good idea. But I did like randomly go on like internet sites and stuff because I had my own computer. My question is, why desensitize yourself though? And why laugh? Like, do y'all remember like the shit that was on the internet back in the day, bro? It was so fucking crazy, and it just like leaves you stuck. What the fuck? Like what?
Following the accidental exposure to a cartel execution video, gore is real-world violence and injury, fully uncensored, including death and murder, and he was discovering that and watching it repeatedly at 14 years old. He describes a progression from initial shock response to habituation, saying, "It got to the point where I don't even cringe when I see it anymore," to then developing a dissociative response, claiming he started laughing at one point. But then,
yeah, like that's where it's like, what the fuck? Like, huh? How? I watch gore to disconnect the part of my brain that feels empathy to wrong things. Like, why? But why though?
escalated to deliberate intentional use.
Yeah.
I watch gore to disconnect the part of my brain that feels empathy to the wrong things. We have something called an...
And also at this part right here, like people were just seeing this man say this and nothing that like what was being said. Like, wait, what? Like, huh?
amygdala, which generates the brain's threat and disgust response to violence. Repeated exposure to graphic stimuli triggers habituation and desensitization. In simpler words, the threshold for what makes the brain want to cringe and look away rises because the stimulus is no longer threatening due to seeing it so much.
But, okay, so trying to make sense of this, you have to keep doing it. You have to go in there and keep doing it. And he said he was addicted, right? To do something so much that you are literally desensitized to it and then you start laughing is like, you have to search this out. But what made you want to search it out? Because the cringe, like it's a bunch of stuff that be on the internet and I still cringe to it. And I'm just thinking from my POV. Of course, please deduce with your POV. because what I'm thinking is you have to search this stuff out to get to the point where it's no longer threatening. Because back then, these weren't things that were readily available. It was like a random video that you saw that did not get flagged by the website, and then boom, it's gone. And now you're just stuck with that. Or you go into a rabbit hole of this because something in your brain kicked in to just like, wait, this is so fucked up, but I want to see it again. And then again, and then again, and then again. It's like, wait, what is the pinpoint to where this turns from accidental to you actually liking this shit?
What David describes in his Discord is consistent with this process in adolescence, whose prefrontal regulatory systems are still maturing and therefore less equipped to contextualize and contain the desensitizing effect. But what distinguishes David's disclosure from typical adolescent experimentation is that last part. He doesn't describe watching gore for entertainment or shock value. He describes it as an emotional engineering exercise.
Exactly.
A deliberate attempt to modify his own empathic response. This
Yeah,
level of
like,
intentionality about emotional desensitization in a 14-year-old is far from typical and represents a significant clinical signal. This would have been a major warning sign and red flag that David was gaining the ability to care less about human life.
Man,
During that
what?
same isolated period, David developed an elaborate alter ego he called Itami, a Japanese word meaning pain.
I have this alter ego named Atami, which means pain in Japanese, and I'm heavily inspired by like anime and stuff like that. But that character that's in the music videos I make now was actually an idea that I had years before music even started, when I was writing my first comic book. And it was this detective that would solve his own crimes. So he was the good guy by day, and then at night he'd kind of transform into this alter ego and then commit crimes he'd solved the morning of.
But Itami isn't this artistic, creative concept he's come up with.
And the fact about that is, in hindsight, this sounds fucking insane. But I can imagine that that would sound pretty fucking cool. And it's very scary because something like this can be said and he's literally doing shit under our... Because people normally would, and I assume people did not think that he was actually doing this shit when he first said it. And that's what makes this more sinister. Like, huh?
David described it in multiple interviews as a character he intended to develop into his own manga, one who was explicitly him, a detective who committed murders and then investigated them himself.
Big part of that manga was an evil version of me, an agent of chaos and kind of my alter ego. And there was an evil version of myself that would kind of come out at random moments, kind of like Fight Club with Tyler Durden. And he would commit the crimes that I would have to solve as the detective. So like when I was as the detective, I'd be like solving murders that I'm committing myself.
Isn't this like Dexter or some shit? I've never seen Dexter. I'm probably like wrong as hell with this.
Understand that there's a difference between normal fantasy and what David's doing.
Right.
We all might fantasize here and there, maybe about obtaining a certain level of wealth or driving a certain car or whatever you guys care about. Escapist fantasy uses fictional scenarios to temporarily relieve stress and provide alternative experience. The psychological concept of fantasy elaboration, however, involves constructing increasingly detailed, immersive internal worlds in which the individual places themselves, not a character, but themselves, and which begin to function as a parallel framework for understanding identity and relationships. David explicitly inserted himself into this narrative. He is not the author of Itami. He's Itami's counterpart. They share an existence. He later described Itami as
the one that is weaving his way into my relationships and ruining them and inducing trauma and things like that.
This language suggests that the alter ego had become a psychological container for the parts of himself he wished to disown but had not eliminated. David transitioned into music accidentally in late 2021 after copyright strikes on his gaming content prompted his mother to suggest he create original music.
I started making music in like December 2021. I used to be a Fortnite YouTuber, bro. Like, it's so crazy. Only reason I started making music is because my videos got copyrighted. Because I was using like Scissors music, Justin Bieber music, all that. And my mom was like, yo, if you're getting copyright strike, you're not making no money, make your own song. So I was like, bro, I could probably do that.
Because of his ability, I know he's able to play and do. So I said, just make your own music. And that was that.
So I kept doing it. And then it kind of just became this thing where the music was getting more popular than the Fortnite videos. My SoundCloud numbers surpassed my Fortnite videos numbers. And it was out of here, bro.
He had no prior musical ambition. What he did have, though, was years of accumulated internal material. The Atami fantasy, the observational psychology built through listening, the poetry he had written since 5th grade, and a set of emotional themes like isolation, romantic destruction, duality that had no other outlet.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Music gave that internal world a public form. It also gave it a socially legitimate one. Dark themes that are wrapped in musical craft don't register to us listeners as warning signs. They register as artistry. The same content that might raise concern if it was in a journal or a private communication is celebrated when it has a compelling melody behind it.
Well, that's also because music is like music is damn near witchcraft, bro. Like that's yeah. But this still doesn't make sense as to how he started befriending a child and then doing all of this.
David's own statements confirm that his early music was not drawn from lived experience, but from imagination and preparation.
When I write music about heartbreak and the sad type of things, I write it not from experience because I was a really homebody. I was homeschooled. Like I didn't have much of a social outlet like that. I write it in like preparation. I feel like when you commit to love, you commit to devastation as well.
You know what I think? I think there was more shit that he watched back then that was more than just gore. Because think about it like this, and this is obviously a random observation. Saying like I watch gore and stuff like that, or I tap into this type of stuff, oh heartbreak, or I create a character from anime, manga, da 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 da. That's obviously going to be intriguing to people. So he can like, when he found this music stuff, he had a foundation of what to say and what to do. All he had to do was think of the instruments and all this other stuff. But who's to say he wasn't watching other shit? You know what I'm saying? Because there's no, I don't believe that it's that if he accidentally, okay, if he was what 14 when he came across gore, and some 14-year-olds who like study the internet and stuff find out about corn around that same time. What if, oh my gosh, what if he was tapping into that type of shit along with the gore, but he never said it? And he held that to himself. Because again, with what's going on here, what's being said, it does not correlate to what he did to Celeste. Not yet. I don't know if he's gonna say this here, but no, I don't think it was just gore that he was watching. Because if we're talking about back then shit, and the internet has always been crazy, how? No. I think he was watching other shit. Obviously, I have no proof about it, but I find it hard to believe that the only thing you were watching was gore to the point where it's desensitizing. Because one thing that is in gore is some of that stuff. And you know what I'm saying? Towards women. What type of gore though? Okay, he said cartel stuff. There's a lot of it's a vast, like gore is gore. It's a vast thing. And I guess this is me like thinking about it because I remember the Telegram stuff, the Nth Room stuff, like all those things, those forums. Who's to say that gore was not adding that too? Am I crazy? Am I crazy or what? I don't know. Cause wait a damn second.
I think it's a mixture of like trying to figure it out myself and then looking at other people's experiences. I mean, 'cause I've never experienced like true heartbreak either. So I write all these songs in preparation for it, so I'm not devastated, you know? So I know what to expect.
He describes writing about heartbreak in preparation, having never experienced it. He states directly, I love over-dramatized themes of romance because it would never be like this in real life.
I love over dramatized themes of romance because it would never be like this in real life. So it allows you to like have more room to play around.
The thematic content of his early catalogue in 2022, like Bleed Out in March, Dirty Secrets in May, Romantic Homicide in July, centers on romantic destruction, hiding dark secrets, killing a romantic partner, and feeling no remorse. Romantic Homicide's central lyric, which David explains in detail in a Genius interview, is constructed specifically around the active first person. Not just you died, but I killed you. He stresses the first person agency.
Which was in the back of my mind, but then you think that I'm gonna say you died, but I say I killed you. So it's not like the thought of her is gone by itself was something that she did, it was something that I decided to do. And I killed her in the back of my mind.
He also describes the back of my mind as the location of this act, which is precisely where he has told us that his fantasy lives. His mother's reaction to Romantic Homicide is very ironic, but also significant.
I showed it to my mother, and she was like, that song's too violent and too sad. You're not releasing it. My son is not gonna be talking about killing people in music. And I was like, I'm gonna take that as a challenge, low key. I played it for her in the car, and she was like, David, this song is too violent. You're talking about killing people in your music? No, not my son. And I was like, wait, I might be onto something.
What if that was a test? What if that was a test to see how people would actually react to it? I don't know if he I don't know if he like sent it to or like showed it to his mom before he released it. But I'm hearing like he's saying like, "Oh, I think this is a challenge." And if what, you know, he said his mom made him only listen to gospel classical music. If your parents and I'm asking you, if your parents are like telling you not to do something or your parents are shielding you from something and you know they're shielding you from something, wouldn't you hide your song when you're talking about killing somebody when literally all your parents or your mom told you to listen to was only instrumental and gospel? Please let me know, because why would you show your mother that sheltered you from this exact type of music? I'm kind of thinking like, was that like a test to how you think the public will react to this? And you're just like, okay, they're going to think this is weird. So let's see if everybody think this is weird. Like, am I lost somehow?
She identified something real in the content. He overrode her objection anyway and released it. And that song was the one that became his commercial breakthrough. The commercial success of Romantic Homicide is a pivotal moment in the psychology trajectory. David didn't receive any social correction for expressing violent romantic fantasy.
And this came out in what, 2022?
He received validation, streams, a record deal with Interscope, and multi-million-dollar career momentum.
What the fuck?
I get the first email from the labels. I showed it to them. I'm like, all right, my mom has to hear about this now. I was like, there's no way I can like sweep this under the rug.
Okay. All right, never mind.
Getting really famous right now. And then I meet with Interscope, who I eventually signed with, and I meet on my team Mogul Vision for management that I signed on management. And then at that point, it was just time to push the button.
From a behavioral reinforcement standpoint, this is near optimal conditioning. The behavior, which was externalizing dark fantasy through art, produced the outcome most desired by someone with his developmental history, which was belonging, recognition, status, and the experience of being known without truly being seen. Because not only did he blow up in music, but that coincided with social media fame, like TikTok, where he got tons of engagement. But looking back on that, those fans were engaging with someone who wasn't even their true self, and who never took the mask off.
I got me as the artist, David, D4vd, Itami, which is the antagonist. He was the blindfold. My gaming character is coming soon. He is like the one that's super tech savvy and stuff like that. And then my social media persona, which is also being built out as we speak. And that's the 4.
He constructed an entire identity architecture around himself with those 4 defined personas: David the artist, Itami the antagonist, a gaming persona, and a social media persona, none of which were David Anthony Burke. The actual self was not among them. What researchers describe as identity diffusion, where the boundary between constructed persona and authentic self becomes genuinely unclear,
and that's also,
appears to be happening here. The masks were not overlaid on a stable self. They may have become the primary mode of self-experience.
And also, you have to put damn near your whole self into at least something that you're doing. I.e., why, what was it, Heath Ledger or Jared Leto? Well, Jared Leto already been crazy. But like, in terms of like method acting, like you have to pretty much become that character. So he literally was trying to become this fucking antagonist.
So David
because at the end of the day, that antagonist is one of the main pillars of this, of why he's where he was at. Literally. The music literally is the springboard for what's going on. So he would have to go all deep and method act into this character. Again, I'm still not seeing where the fuck this went to talking to a child. And I'm assuming around this time, this was already happening.
Early on, learned how to switch between characters. In private, he could be this antisocial kid with dark fantasies. In interviews, he could sound smart and sophisticated. And on TikTok, he could do his best to be relatable and goofy to his audience. That ability to switch became something that we now potentially know might have helped him deal with the consequences of his future actions.
'Cause what?
According to prosecution documents, David and Celeste Rivas Hernandez first made contact online in January 2022 when she was 11 years old.
Oh
and
my
he was
gosh.
16. This reportedly happened on
Oh my gosh, what the fuck?
a fortnight, which would be consistent with how David got his social interaction when he was homeschooled. The prosecution documents confirm a physical relationship began in November 2023 when Celeste was 13 and David was 18.
Bro,
so they knew each other
what?
online for almost 2 years before.
So these motherfuckers was playing Fortnite and that's how they met? Oh, hell no.
Ever becoming intimate. This is purely my opinion based on available context and evidence, but I don't believe David sought out Celeste in a predatory form, looking for a minor specifically because that's what physically attracted him.
Is this where he fucked up and made that correction? Cause what the hell you just say?
My opinion based on available context and evidence, but I don't believe David sought out Celeste in a predatory form, looking for a minor specifically because that's what physically attracted him.
Okay, one thing. If they met on fucking Fortnite, have y'all ever met somebody on a game? I was an avid gamer before I started, working and shit like that. And I used to meet a lot of people. There's one thing that happens when, say, like you hear a girl on your headset, or this is something that I guess I've done. You ask them how old they are, because obviously there are kids on the game, and there's no way her voice did not sound like an 11-year-old, bro. 11? And you're 11. And I'm trying to think, like, on the mic, she sounds like a child. There's no way he did not ask her age. There's no way. There's genuinely no way. What the fuck? Like, what? And if we're going off the thing that he asked her age, he didn't give a damn. And he wanted to keep this shit a secret. But how did we get to the point where they were like 2 years later? What the fuck, bro? What? Nah, gang. Nah, bro. What?
The fact he was only 16 at the time and was being homeschooled makes it completely plausible that the relationship began as some kind of intense online companionship where he was just happy to talk to someone.
An 11-year-old at the age of 16, an 11-year-old. See, this is where I'm like tied into like, what the fuck else was he watching when he was watching this gore shit? Because even when I was 16 and there was like some people online who are kids, cause I'm not, first off, I'm not even want to talk to you. You a kid, but why am I over here doing all this talking to a kid? Like, how does this personify into something? I'm genuinely thinking this was like a seed planted in something that was already manifesting. Cause there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way without somebody already having that shit in their mind that they would do some shit like that and proceed with this person. And if your mama, cuz, you mean to tell me your mom told you not to listen to secular music and didn't tell you don't start messing with kids? You know what? I think it is also maybe possible that she assumed that her child would not be a fucking pedo. And you would think like, oh, I wouldn't even have to tell him because obviously don't fuck with a child. And I guess that's something that it wasn't common sense to him. And also the thing about him living vicariously through people and people watching, who's to say in that gore shit he wasn't living vicariously through the person killing somebody? And also, if this Tommy character is somebody that kills somebody and he solves the murder, bro, what the fuck? Like, huh? Am I crazy as shit for connecting all this? Cause I ain't gonna lie to you. I never knew how they met. I just thought it was on some, I don't know. But it would make sense if it's on the game how they met. And you didn't ask her age. You didn't hear her voice and say, "Oh, this is a kid." Oh, I ain't gonna. You heard her voice and was trying to, because you were so happy to talk to somebody. See, this is why we gonna check out that second video, because I think right there is where he fucked up. I think right there he fucked up, and that's where the correction is gonna be.
With age not being one of his concerns, I believe they started off as friends who confided in each other, made jokes, and wasn't started off in any inappropriate nature. What changed it is the question. The evidence that the prosecution are bringing forward documents a pattern that David was grooming Celeste in stages that got gradually more intense. The first thing he did was make her feel special. He released a romantic homicide music video on Celeste's birthday. He then recorded a song titled Celeste in December 2023, expressing deep personal obsession, and he continually maintained her presence in his Discord server.
This nigga was looking for a fucking muse. Or tried to use her as a muse. You sick fuck.
The song Celeste references the girl with my name tattooed on her chest.
Because this nigga has never had social interactions like that. And the first person that he thought that could possibly be that one thing. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to say the wrong thing, so I'm trying to approach this very, very carefully. In learning some of the evidence from the time where he murdered her, it is obvious that he didn't give a fuck about Celeste. He gave a fuck about his career, and his career was the main thing. And if we're going off of that Celeste threatened his career, that's when he did it. If we go back to the beginning when they met and he already had this what's it called? He already had this music career going on. I think he was looking for a muse to make his music pop more. And something clicked in his mind that Celeste was the person. And then he's a freaky fuck, a nasty nigga. Two things can be true. He could have just been talking to her and then just started doing inappropriate shit because he's a nasty nigga. And then at the same time, it could help his music as a nasty motherfucker. Because he's not somebody who because what was said? What did Jay Wisdom say? He said he didn't approach human interaction in a way where it's like, oh, my peers talking da da da. He did it in a way to observe and use people as test subjects. So that would make sense if his freaky ass used this This is sick, bro. This is sick. This is sick. This is fucking sick.
A detail that subsequently materialized in reality when Celeste had his name tattooed on her finger and shared it in the Discord server in July 2024.
Oh, what the fuck?
He also never publicly posted her on social media, but would post pictures where she's present but not identifiable.
And why the fuck he didn't? Why the fuck he didn't? You know why he didn't. Because he knew. He knew.
Or captioning posts referencing having a girlfriend to show his fans he was in a relationship, which gave his romantic music credibility. Another thing he did was use financial control. Prosecution documents confirmed that after Celeste's parents removed her phone from her in February 2024, David drove to Lake Elsinore where she lives and paid a classmate $1,000 to provide Celeste with a new phone he had purchased so that they could maintain contact. This was done after law enforcement had directly informed him that she was a 13-year-old runaway. Despite her parents and law enforcement trying to stop David from connecting with her, he chose to go around them anyway. He then isolated her from her family and support system. There's debate on whether Celeste had the best home life in the first place, but David definitely capitalized on that and took advantage of her vulnerability.
Yeah,
Throughout 2024, the prosecution documents confirm that Celeste spent significant time at David's Hollywood Hills residence, accompanied him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas, and was repeatedly reported missing by her family. This pattern of running away is consistent with successful grooming. The victim's primary attachment has been displaced towards the perpetrator. David had become the new safe place in her eyes,
which
is really sad to think about in hindsight. Another thing David desired was surveillance and control. It could be for humor purposes, so take it as context rather than fact, but in January 2024, after they'd started a physical relationship, he posted a TikTok with the text on the screen implying a partner telling him that she will swallow an AirTag so he gets to know her every move. It seems playful on the surface, but with the context we have, he's describing a desire for a constant location surveillance over.
And he's also doing that dramatizing bullshit that he said in the interview. And he thinks that saying this online is like some shit that would be accepted, and it was. It fucking was. Bro.
For a minor. On January 11th, 2024, David did a Twitch stream, but he had Celeste in full view of his audience, right there in plain sight. She was wearing a hoodie and glasses to perhaps conceal suggestions at her age, and they seemed to be doing a cooking stream.
Season it? It's already seasoned, bro. It's Alfredo.
I'm yet to find the full stream, but something gets said beforehand, and the comments start saying things
pray
like,
for his career,
pray for his career, chat. You're done for, bro. Nah, you going on the Epstein list. There's no escaping this, bro.
Yeah, like, fool, she looks like a kid. What the fuck?
Caught you in 4K. All messages that allude to the chat realizing that David is a allegedly. David reads these comments out aloud and questions Celeste. Are we done? To which Celeste says, we need to delete this.
Pray for his career, chat. Are we done? Are we
We need to delete.
Bro, he looks like he's fucking panicking. He looks like he's fucking panicking.
Are we, Maz, can we delete all VODs? And then as soon as the stream ends, delete the stream too? Can we delete? Can we delete?
Oh my gosh.
Everything? You done for, bro? Y'all are not done? Now you gonna Epstein? Yo, wait.
You see the instant panic in David because he's tried to keep this relationship a secret, and this was the closest he'd gotten to being exposed. The chat continues with David and Celeste Island trip and David Epstein flight list. But something else gets said. David puts his hand firmly on Celeste's shoulder and says, "I media trained you." To which she replies, "No, you didn't."
Media
I
trained.
personally don't.
Yo, I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
He says that's controversial, and she questions him with something that almost exposed his secret to the world.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
I forgot that happened in that video. I ain't gonna lie to you. Bro, this nigga is sick.
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Yo, that's like
Mwah.
that's like fool. That's not even funny. And I'm not really somebody that likes to say, oh, you know, jokes have truth in it, but that joke had fucking truth in it. My nigga. Oh my gosh.
Mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
She seemingly regrets saying it straight away, and David ends the stream. Of course, I have to preface that streaming clips get taken out of context all the time.
Hey,
What we
bro.
don't know-
No. Ain't no out of context nothing. Ain't no out of context nothing. Not in this context. Like, fool. Like, why the fuck would you say that? Like, there are some things that are like so outwardly crazy that like the only thing that I can think of is these people saying he's going on the Epstein list, and she thought a funny joke would be off of that. Still, the fuck
is what was actually said beforehand, and the chat could have been referencing something completely different. But what we do know is that David was making attempts to media train Celeste, in his own words. Due to him understanding what he was doing was wrong, this is an attempt at power control, because by giving her instructions on how to act, she's molded to become more obedient.
fool.
It's crazy that this Twitch
11, bro. She was 11. Do you remember when you were 11? Imagine a 16-year-old came up to you or tried to talk to you. And you 16, imagine trying to don't even imagine that. Don't talk to no fucking 11-year-old. Cause when I was 16, I wasn't even thinking about 11-year-old people. They kids. I mean, not people, kids. They kids. What? Huh?
stream is almost a mirror of what the prosecution are alleging David did to Celeste over a year later. When he was on the verge of getting exposed, he tells his mods to delete everything, to physically discard of the evidence so that no one can find out the truth. He did what he needed to maintain control over the narrative, and panics when there's a risk of the mask slipping.
You
Prosecution
dumbass put her in
documents
the
state
fucking
that
thing.
Celeste and David broke up in November 2024, though text messages confirm a continued contact through to at least March 2025.
Yeah.
The documented text exchanges describe Celeste growing distress at the nature of their relationship. She messaged, according to prosecution filings, "All we do is have sex and just hang out, man. I want more than that for myself." If you notice, the prosecution frames this as evidence of David's manipulation. This is because of the context that is supposedly surrounding this message. The prosecution's argument is that David had deliberately led her to believe that they had some sort of future together, that she was his girlfriend, his partner, someone he was building something with, specifically in order to maintain physical access to her and her silence.
It's crazy that she literally is like growing up, and this is sick. Oh my gosh.
She was emotionally invested in a future I don't think he actually planned to give her.
I don't
now,
either.
Before we proceed, I have to reiterate, because I know how soft the YouTube guidelines are when it comes to active cases and demonetization, but David is only alleged to have murdered Celeste Rivas Hernandez and has pleaded not guilty. So take what I say next as opinion, as rumors, as theory, but not fact.
Okay.
Because his behavior over 2025, if not guilty of the murder, just looks like normal behavior. But that's also the problem if he is guilty, because only a psychopath could do what's been done to Celeste and go about life as normal. On the night of April 22nd, 2025,
well, until the shit happened, until like all the stuff happened.
Prosecution documents describe a lengthy argument conducted over text messages. Celeste had become aware of David's relationships with other women. Although they supposedly weren't in a relationship anymore, this triggered Celeste, and she threatened to expose their relationship publicly and destroy his music career. His debut studio album, Withered, was scheduled for release April 25th, 2025, so 3 days later. On top of that, he had a multi-million-dollar career, active endorsements, and a world tour booked. The prosecution alleges that at approximately 8:40 p.m. on April 23, 2025, David ordered an Uber to transport Celeste from her Lake Elsinore home to his Hollywood Hills residence. She arrived at approximately just after 10 p.m. The prosecution alleges that shortly after her arrival, David stabbed her multiple times and stood by while she bled out, making no attempt to call emergency services. At approximately 11:30 p.m., he drove north on the 101 freeway to Santa Barbara County, texting and calling Celeste's phone as he drove, a pattern the prosecution characterizes as a deliberate attempt at a cover story. He returned home early on April 24th, went to a radio interview for the album, and attended the album release party later that evening.
That's
the
fucking
prosecution
crazy,
then documents evidence
bro.
of David's poor attempt at concealing the crime and dismembering her body, which he then left in the front trunk of his Tesla.
Burke placed her body in the inflatable pool he'd ordered to prevent her blood from spilling onto his garage floor and used a chainsaw to cut off her limbs.
I would hope that this trial is quick and no other bullshit happens. Get this nigga the fuck out of here. Allegedly.
Surveillance footage confirms David drove his Tesla for the last time on July 29th, 2025, before parking it on Bluebird Avenue in Hollywood Hills and departing for his concert tour. And this is the alleged story we have so far on how David potentially murdered Celeste and then continued with life like nothing happened.
Fuck this
The following
guy.
analysis I'll give is based on if the evidence presented by the prosecution is factual and proven, and is just my opinion.
Okay.
The first thing that I believe to be true is that David demonstrates a dark triad personality.
Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Holy shit. Okay.
The dark triad is a mix of three personality constructs: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, identified in psychological literature as co-occurring and collectively associated with manipulative, exploitative, and callous interpersonal behavior. And I believe all three appear relevant to David's documented behavioral profile.
Okay, we're learning about something today. Okay.
Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is characterized by grandiosity, a persistent need for admiration, entitlement, and a lack of genuine empathy.
Right.
Subclinical narcissistic traits, which don't meet the full diagnostic threshold but are clinically meaningful, are observable in David's behavior across multiple domains. The construction of an elaborate multi-persona identity architecture, the use of a child as a participant in his artistic and fantasy world, the apparent expectation that normal rules, including the laws, didn't apply to him, and the documented use of financial resources to purchase compliance from multiple parties, like Celeste's classmates and potentially others, rather than just accepting social or legal constraints. He continued pursuit of Celeste after direct law enforcement contact, despite being explicitly told that she was a 13-year-old runaway, which just demonstrates how important he thought he was. Narcissistic individuals frequently exhibit a belief that ordinary legal and social constraints are obstacles that apply to others, but not them.
Yeah, I don't know how that even makes sense. There's some excuse me, sorry. I don't, like, how does your brain, okay.
Machiavellianism refers to a strategic, manipulative orientation towards interpersonal relationships.
Okay.
In simpler terms, using others as instruments towards personal goals, maintaining multiple social presentations simultaneously, and planning several steps ahead in your devious plans.
And that actually makes sense due to his, like, observatory stuff from the beginning.
David's documented behavior across the 2022 to 2025
again, allegedly,
period is consistent with this profile. The staged disclosure of his relationship that was sufficient to lend his music credibility, but not enough to expose it, the financial management of witnesses, the claimed media training of a minor to manage his public perception, and the fake name he used on the Amazon purchases when trying to cover his murder trail. Psychopathy is characterized by reduced fear response, diminished empathy, shallow affect, and the capacity to engage in harmful behavior without the guilt and anxiety that normally regulates such behavior in normal individuals.
And that ties in that Gore shit where he said he had him to desensitize himself.
What's actually happening in the brain is reduced amygdala reactivity, meaning the internal alarm system that makes violence psychologically hard to deal with is significantly reduced. David's deliberate desensitization program beginning at 14, his awareness of this process, saying, I watch Gore to desensitize the part of my brain that feels empathy to the wrong things.
You know what's actually sick is that the age that he was when he started, or when he I guess, yeah, started watching this gore stuff, it's the same age that allegedly he killed Celeste. Also, this numerology stuff is really like scaring the fuck out of me, bro. Like they're dropping songs on her birthday, the connections to the 14 years, yo.
And his ability, if the allegations are accurate, to attend a radio interview and album release party within
right
hours
after
of the alleged murder are all consistent with elevated psychopathic traits. The prosecution's timeline describes someone who moved through the alleged crime and its immediate aftermath in a goal-directed, organized manner without visible emotional disruption to his public functioning. He saw the murder and the cleanup as a task to get out the way.
Bro, this looks so fucking scary. Oh my god.
Rather than a major disturbance to his life. It's important to note that psychopathy exists on a continuum. High psychopathic traits do not predict violence on their own.
Okay.
They represent a reduction in the internal constraints that make violence improbable for most people. You can
Interesting.
definitely have psychopathic traits and go through life without killing anyone. But
Okay.
if you had to, or if you believed you had to, it wouldn't be hard for you to mentally process.
Huh. So pretty much it's inside, well, you can assume that it's inside a bunch of people, but you wouldn't be able to see it unless it's shown. Is that not scary? What the bro?
The best way I see fit to analyzing the rest of his psychology is by answering some common questions surrounding the case. The first is, was David born with psychopathic traits, or did the environment shape him like this? The evidence doesn't support a simple nature or nurture answer, and the research literature on psychopathy doesn't even need one. Studies on antisocial personality disorder, which is the more official diagnosis with traits similar to psychopathy, have found that genetic predisposition is a real factor, but it's not determinative, meaning genes do play some part, but it needs more than that. What the developmental history suggests is that David likely had some dispositional features like his elevated sensation seeking, a reduced fear response, a natural tendency towards social observation over social participation that interacted with a profoundly adverse developmental environment. The isolation he experienced in homeschooling removed the social components that normally regulate and redirect dark impulses in adolescence, such as peer feedback, mentorship, romantic experience within age-appropriate contexts, and the reality testing that comes from genuine reciprocal relationships.
Okay, one thing that I'm gonna like speak in abstract is like, I'm not, and I don't want to blame the parents for what they did in terms of like homeschooling him and taking him out of school and stuff like that, because there are people who are taken out of schools and are homeschooled who don't do this shit. So I'm gonna put that to the side. However, is it right to say that he had these things inside of him already that were at the levels of what they were? And the fact that he stumbled across the... Okay, at the end of the day, what I think is that what probably did the switch was the time where he intentionally checked out those gore videos. Not the time where he stumbled upon them. Like, cause say like, and this is not a good analogy, but say like you're trying something for the first time. You're like, oh, that's a crazy taste. Oh my gosh. And something in your brain clicks and it's like, I kind of want to taste that again to feel that again. And like the repetition of doing that. And then now that this can also be used as the same type of observational tool, manifested itself into this whole thing to where the time where he found Celeste and something else clicked inside of him. Either I believe that for him, I think there's two things. Two things is, I believe, allegedly, of course, that he was always, so he made this Itami character and everything, and had this whole fantasy around Itami character that, you know, this is this character that's fueling his musical career, and he was able to separate boom, 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 these different personalities or personas fueling from the musical career. And to me, I think that's what he was focused on most. And while I say this, I don't say like as if like, oh, if he just wanted to take control of all that stuff means he's less than the freaky fuck. He's already a freaky fuck. No matter whatever I'm saying, I'm standing on this nigga is sick as shit. But from what the evidence is telling me, or from the evidence that's being shown, is that he did not give a fuck about Celeste at all. He was just looking for a placeholder. And it's very sad that Celeste had to be that for him. She did not deserve this shit, bro. And it actually is breaking my heart more because I know how random people coming into like lobbies on the game are, and how you're able to literally have lifelong friends with like a random game party with people. Like the possibility of that. Like I have a good amount of friends that I met off the game. Of course, of course they're all of age. You know what I'm saying? But like I'm just thinking, like I'm going back into the times where the random people that I've met in, say, like Call of Duty lobbies, Fortnite lobbies, 2K lobbies, Madden lobbies, all these lobbies, to where y'all just start talking. And the fact that he wasn't able to give enough of a fuck to recognize that this is a child, and literally not attempt to ruin and end her life. With all the things that was being said in this video, I really cannot help but think that this was just to fuel this fucking persona. And this was a culmination of his art that he never got the chance to personify in real life. And I'm saying this because this started out him watching real life shit, but the desensitization, also him looking at this through a computer screen, and his imagination and his people watching and his observation, using people as test subjects. I can't help but to think like he had a thought of in his mind saying like, okay, I have a test subject. I don't know if it's premeditated or not, but it doesn't matter if it's premeditated or not. The shit is still sick. But when Celeste came in, either he already thought that, or it gradually to where he thought like, okay, I can use this as a thing for my music. I can do this. I can do da 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 da. Or the shit that he saw, which I still think is other than gore, or some of that PDF shit was in like the gore stuff, also personified in this, because he didn't even like be like, oh, you're a kid. Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to talk to you. Like he continued. I don't believe he never asked her age. He was already presented to her. He was already presented with her age 2 years later, and still proceeded to do this. So at the same time, I'm also thinking that this was his plan all along. And like he was able to ride this nasty fucking whatever is going on until shit hits the fan. But also him putting her on stream, he's not as smart as some people may say. This is really nasty. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness, bro.
Basically, when you're in school and you're weird, people are going to tell you you're weird, and they're not going to be friends with you. And that's going to cause you to not be weird. The gore consumption, the fantasy elaboration, and the emotional desensitization program didn't occur despite his isolation. They occurred, most likely, because of it. Any genetic psychopathy with fantasy elaboration and the emotional desensitization, and you're weird, people are going to tell you you're weird, and they're not going to be friends with you, and that's going to cause you to not be weird. The gore consumption, the fantasy elaboration, and the emotional desensitization program didn't occur despite his isolation. They occurred, most likely, because of it.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, because I remember earlier in the video I said like we had a little bit of similarities, but at the same time I had some I had some social interaction, and I still came across some wild shit on the internet, but that never personified. I didn't go that way that he's going. And that's what I'm saying when I'm saying the internet was so wild, and the internet is still wild, that like you can't really say for a definitive fact that the reason for his isolation is because of this. And I don't think that's what he's saying, but I don't know. Because there's a lot of people that tap into gore and random shit on the internet. But his intentionality is what makes it so scary, though. Because also I'm thinking, like, who's to say that he didn't think that the people who were like ostracizing him, he thought that they were the people in these gore videos who were getting brutally, you know? Like, it's such a wild spectrum that you can't help yourself but think. But at the same time, I can't help myself but to think he saw something in there that he thought was cool, to where he tried to do it in real life. Fuck, dude. Fuck.
Any genetic psychopathy predisposition might have stayed more muted in a more socially connected environment, but David was given 5 years of uninterrupted space in which to develop it without correction. The next question is, if many children experience homeschooling, many children watch gore, and many children watch anime, and they don't become violent, then why was David different? The answer is not any single factor, but the specific combination and timing of factors, and the absence of mitigating ones. 3 elements distinguish David's profile from the general population of adolescents who share some of his experiences. First, the duration and completeness of his social isolation was extreme. Not partial homeschooling with peer contact, but 5 years of near total isolation during the precise developmental window where identity and empathy are formed through reciprocal relationship. Fair enough if they let him go to some sports clubs and he got to meet people weekly, but he was completely alone. Second, his response to that isolation was not passive, but active, as he built an increasingly elaborate internal fantasy world in which violent romantic narratives were central, and he deliberately used that period to pursue desensitization by watching gore videos.
He watched something else. There was more shit than just that. There had to have been more shit than that. Like I don't know, like what was it? I came across like something on TikTok about Berserk, and like the panels in Berserk and stuff, like, and that I never saw it, but I was like scared to watch, to like see it or search it up. But like the description of it was like, no, I don't want to fuck with that. And he said like, what, I don't know what animes he said, but he said he got into anime and mangas and stuff like that. What else did he watch? Because obviously he's not going to tell the public the stuff that he watched. He just say gore videos. Like, it's a lot more than just that. Like, I would say for me, like, coming across gore videos made me want to watch Quentin Tarantino movies back in the day, because that was one of the things that like gave me that, I guess, what the fuck stimulus without it actually being real, because it was so dramatized of how, you know, shooting somebody and all that other shit. Like the real factor was taken out. But I was somebody to separate this because this shit is like real as fuck. You know what I'm saying? So, what?
Third, and perhaps most critically, nothing corrected the trajectory. There were no peer relationships to provide reality feedback. There were no teachers or mentors who intervened. When his dark material reached the public, it was celebrated. When law enforcement contacted him directly about a 13-year-old runaway, he found a way around their intervention.
But in the Discord, they knew she was a kid. Right? I don't remember when that first video that we did. I don't remember. There's people in the Discord that knew and they were deleting stuff.
The system of natural corrections that normally checks and redirects deviant development failed at every point. Another question is, with his fantasies and music content, did David always have a lust for murder, or did circumstance just cause him to kill in that moment?
I think for me, for somebody, and I can't really wrap my head around this motherfucker, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm just trying to make an assumption, like allegedly his natural want to observe could have also been a factor of like trying this in real life. Because sometimes when you're like into a certain type of thing, like the method acting thing, and if you have this dark triad stuff going on, you may get bored of the fictional stories and stuff, and something to reach a stimulus is bring the fiction into nonfiction. You know, like you know how, like, what was it? It was some story that we saw where did somebody got bored of, or just the status quo of a serial killer killing animals and then getting bored and killing people. Like that type of pipeline. And I'm just spitballing right now, so I would like to see what y'all say in the comments when I check them out. It's like it's really hard to just chalk this up to something. So pretty much what I'm just saying, I'm chalking this up to, this is a freak ass nigga, bro.
Neither characterization is fully accurate. Despite how wild our minds like to run with conspiracy, evidence doesn't support a long-term conscious plan to murder Celeste. There's no indication he groomed her with killing in mind from the outset. What the evidence does support is a sustained internal world in which romantic relationships and fatal violence were thematically intertwined.
And also, that could also be something like, it wasn't the plan in the moment, or like it wasn't the plan in the beginning, but it wasn't something that was off the table if shit hit the fan. You know, it's like it's like when he said he desensitized himself to the empathy. It's like, oh, I got threatened with this. Oh, why don't I do this? I already practiced it not being bad, so it shouldn't even be bad, right? But I'm going to hide it with this type of stuff. We're going to hide all these things. We're going to hide because at the end of the day, he didn't want to lose that musical career. He didn't want to lose that exception from the masses, that exception that he wanted so bad. He didn't want to lose that because that was his high. And also, his high was literally based off of this character he made that literally, if he did this and he actually got away with it, it would have fueled something else. It would literally have just fueled that whole persona and make it more real to him. And he may have 10x this shit, bro. Like, he gotta go, son. He gotta go. He gotta go.
In which he had deliberately engineered his own emotional desensitization to that violence, and in which he had repeatedly rehearsed through his music videos, through lyrics, fantasy, and alter ego construction, the psychological experience of killing a partner and feeling nothing.
And also, I feel like he seems like the type of nigga or the type of guy that would be like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. Damn, I can't believe I'm in a music video right now. This is working. I can't believe I put a casket I can't believe I put a casket right outside my concert and people going up to the casket, do all these other things. The casket, I can't believe I'm on stage literally doing this stuff with the casket. Like, he seems like somebody is like, wow, this is really happening. Wow, I can't believe this is happening. So who's to say all that shit is not put into a whole type of thing to where if he does this and he actually got away with it, it's like, wow, huh? Like the type of stuff in your brain where you think you're above the law or above reality. Like, who's to say that's not a thing?
Whether or not he consciously intended to kill Celeste, he had spent years building the psychological infrastructure that made it.
And he also like was lying in wait. So it don't matter how long he was planning, he planned it. Even if it was a sloppy plan, he planned it.
Executable. The prosecution's alleged motive that he was silencing a threat to his career is entirely plausible as a proximate trigger, but the proximate trigger ignited something that had been laid down over a long period of time. A person without that psychological infrastructure, confronted with the same threat, would not have had the same response. They might have offered to talk about things, maybe to pay her off, or something, but not murder. A very common question is, why did he leave the body in his Tesla and then just go on tour? Was it narcissistic overconfidence or something else?
I don't know.
There's the theory that he wanted the body to be found so that everyone could appreciate the art of his crime. And whilst psychologically intriguing, it doesn't hold up well against the broader evidence.
What?
The prosecution documents a person who used a false name to purchase disposable equipment, drove to Santa Barbara County to destroy evidence the night of the alleged murder, made deliberate false statements to law enforcement, and continued attempting to incinerate evidence months later, as he bought a burn cage in July that he didn't end up using. This is not the behavior of someone wanting the body to be discovered. It's the behavior of someone who believed he was managing the situation competently.
Or it could be he wanted to, it could be, and I'm spitballing again, allegedly, when he put her on that stream, and people were reacting so negatively, I think that was his first threat. I think that was one of his first threats, or that was one of his main threats. And another thing probably clicked inside of him to hope that Celeste was going to, stay the course that he wanted. But I'm kind of thinking, allegedly, that when she said that thing about R-wording kids, I think that clicked in his mind for something. I don't know what, but my brain is thinking this a little bit, and I could be wrong. Because when I don't know the specifics, specific timeline of when she said or threatened his career or threatened to go to authorities and stuff like that. And if what Jay Wisdom said is true, that she saw him with other girls, with these two things, it seems like this dude is not as smart as he thinks he is, or he thinks his hiding skills are good. But when he gets caught in doing something, he's literally like a deer in headlights. And also, this also seems like somebody who has never been caught doing something. Like it's so minuscule, but it can make a little bit of sense. When he was talking about that he had that iPod that he had, and he still had it. That's like a little mini, microcosm to this hiding type of thing that he does. He still had the iPod. So And I'm not saying that's like a complete factor in all of that stuff, but it does make a little bit of sense. Like, he thinks he's good at hiding, but he's not. He's not at all. So if he was this like artistic evil mastermind in the case, he could done all that knowing that he's gonna get caught, and he wanted to, but he didn't want it to happen at the time he wanted to. So he was trying to do something about, like, it's very sloppy. And the 2 Chainsaws thing still is fucking my head up. It's still fucking my head up.
The most clinically consistent explanation is indeed narcissistic overconfidence, a well-documented feature of individuals who combine high narcissistic and psychopathic traits. The belief isn't simply "I am above the law" in an abstract sense. It's the belief that the individual's intelligence, status, and resources are sufficient to manage any problem.
And also, he was able to get away with this shit for a brick. Like, being for literally being in, I'm not going to call it a relationship, having a victim for this long and letting this shit go this long.
Leaving the car on the street rather than disposing of it properly is a catastrophic risk assessment failure, but it's consistent with the same cognitive pattern that led him to go to his radio interview.
He also thought he had time. That's that overconfidence. Yeah, okay.
The morning after the alleged murder. The operational logic appears to have been, the car is not at my address, it's a few hundred feet away, I'm about to leave on tour, and this is manageable. He definitely thought that Celeste running away all the time was going to play to his advantage, as no one would be looking for her. But when it comes to dead bodies decomposing, you don't look for that smell.
And
The
he
smell
didn't know
finds
that.
you.
Exactly.
The question most fascinating to me, especially when watching through all of his TikTok videos following the proposed date of the alleged murder, is what allowed him to continue functioning normally after the fact. Several interacting psychological mechanisms are relevant here. The first is the reduced guilt and anxiety response associated with elevated psychopathic traits. The internal system that makes violent acts psychologically disabling for most people was, in David's case, already significantly reduced through years of deliberate desensitization.
Okay.
The second is compartmentalization, a defense mechanism in which an individual maintains separate psychological areas that don't interact, allowing normal social functioning to continue in one area while extreme events are contained in another. The third is the role of his persona architecture. David had spent years living between constructed identities, none of which were his actual self. Switching to David the artist for a radio interview was not a performance grafted onto a traumatized person. It was, by that point, his default public mode of existence. He was the psychopathic and cold version of himself that night, and switched his persona to David the artist by the following morning. Finally, if the prosecution's characterization of the alleged murder as an act to silence Celeste is accurate, then there was no emotional conflict to suppress. The act achieved its objective. The threat was eliminated. For someone with the psychological profile described in this video, David saw this more as completing a task rather than being horrified at what he'd done. So it wasn't that deep to him, and that's why there were no signs, at least publicly, of breakdown or panic. Now, the final two are significantly important to many of you watching. Firstly, was David an actual pedo that would have pursued other underage girls, or was Celeste's age just incidental to timing? The evidence doesn't actually support primary pedophilic orientation as the dominant motivation, as I addressed earlier.
I think he saw some shit in them gore videos, and he was watching something else.
However, the pattern of seeking a relationship with someone significantly younger, from an unstable home, and therefore highly susceptible to the power dynamic he preferred, is unlikely to be entirely incidental. The specific age of Celeste, 11 at first contact, 13 at the alleged start of the physical relationship, may reflect opportunity and controllability rather than exclusive attraction to that age group. Whether he would have sought out other minors depends significantly on whether the control and power dynamic, rather than the age itself, was the primary draw.
And also, I think in terms of PDF stuff, that is like dormant in some aspects, because there are people who will manipulate adults and of age people. But then again, there's no way to make concrete evidence that if there was somebody that he wanted to seek out, well, technically this is also seeking out, though. and pursuing. Usually, wait, whoa. Wait a minute. No, it's probably the same thing, because I don't know how they got together on Fortnite. That's one. Usually, you come across random people on the internet or online and on games, and there will be times where they speak and stuff can happen. Like, you can get into a conversation with somebody playing Fortnite, because playing Fortnite is literally a game where you have to be teammates and you gain the trust of your fucking teammates. And I don't want to say coincidental, it's very unfortunate, but something happened where he latched on and pursued. So we can't really say, is it just timing or he pursued. I don't think it's physically possible to just start pursuing. Well, it is possible to start pursuing 11-year-old. You can just be in games and start saying, hey, you talking? And if it's not a teenager or a child, you just leave the game. Like, that's a possible thing. Like, so I don't want to never say never, but with what's going on, you can't really say if Celeste wasn't there, it would have been another child. Huh. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's fuck this nigga. That's just what it is. At the end of the day, it's fuck this nigga. I'm trying to figure out how the fuck does this even happen. And like, I guess he could say, oh, he wanted to talk to somebody. Man, get the fuck out of here. I mean, you don't need to talk to no damn 11-year-old if you 16. I don't give a fuck how bad your life is. You go for try and find somebody else. I think that this motherfucker was literally trying to find a muse, or he had a muse thing in the back of his mind or some shit like that. And Celeste came, and that was his first time that he thought he can pound. Ooh, that sounds so bad. I'm so sorry, Celeste. You did not deserve this shit, man. And especially if if this really was how they met, this is so fucking sad, bro. This is so sad, man.
The evidence leans towards him just preferring the control aspect, which suggests that his targets might have included adult women in vulnerable circumstances just as much as minors specifically. In simple terms, I don't believe he cares if it's an adult or a minor, just so as long as he can control them.
Yeah, so he's just a predator. He's a fucking predator. That's just what it is. But he's a pedo too.
And the final question, if not caught for this alleged murder, would David have killed again? On the available evidence, a second murder was not inevitable, but the risk profile wasn't low. The alleged murder, if accurately characterized by the prosecution, was carried out to eliminate a specific threat to a specific goal, which was protecting his career. This is different from the profile of a serial killer driven by compulsion or escalating fantasy fulfillment, like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and the BTK killer. However, the post-alleged murder behavior described in prosecution documents, the methodical dismemberment, the ongoing attempts to destroy evidence, the continued public functioning, is consistent with someone who didn't experience sufficient psychological cost from the act to be deterred from repeating it under similar circumstances. If the career threat had risen again with another person in a position to expose damaging information, the psychological barriers to a similar response would have been lower the second time, not higher. Basically, if the same situation repeated itself with another girl like Celeste, David would just say, it worked the first time, so I'll do it again. But I don't believe he'd go around his life trying to find people to murder. So, how do we summarize? David Anthony Burke's trajectory is not the product of a single cause, and it doesn't follow the profile of someone who is always going to commit a violent crime. It follows the profile of someone whose dispositional characteristics were given an extreme developmental environment in which those characteristics were amplified, reinforced, and never corrected. The homeschooling decision at 13 was the rupture, not because it was inherently abusive, because it removed the entire social architecture within which deviant development is normally detected and corrected, and replaced it with 5 years of unstructured internet access and internal elaboration. The resulting internal world, saturated with violent romantic fantasy, deliberately desensitized emotions, and a constructed alter ego who committed murders, was then given a commercial platform that celebrated rather than challenged it.
However, if he was getting bullied in school, who's to say he wouldn't go on the internet and try and find an outlet and then go back to school? Who's to say that's not a possibility, though?
The relationship with Celeste Rivas Hernandez was built on the structural conditions his isolation had created, an online social infrastructure that gave him access to vulnerable people, a power dynamic he had never experienced in any other relational context, and a fantasy framework that had always positioned a romantic partner as someone he would end up killing. What the prosecution alleges is that when that relationship produced a threat to his survival, both professionally and financially, the psychological infrastructure necessary to respond violently was formed, and the psychological barriers that would have made most people unable to act on that response weren't. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was reported missing by her family multiple times. She had reached out to the one adult who was supposed to care for her and was told that she was wanted, loved, and seen, or at least made to feel that way at one point in their relationship. The prosecution alleges that that same person who told her those things ordered the Uber that brought her to his door and stood by as she bled out on the floor of his Hollywood Hills home. The warning signs were there, in his music, in his Discord, in his fantasy constructs, in his own words, in interviews, given freely to journalists who heard them as art. The question this case raises, for parents, for platforms, for the music industry, and for the audiences who stream artists without reading what they're actually saying, is not why nobody saw it. It's why, when it was visible, it was so easy to look away.
We're gonna move on to the next video. This is I think it's his correction.
Following the release of my psychological analysis on David, there's been a certain opinion I made that's had some pushback from viewers.
Okay.
I stated, I don't believe David sought out Celeste in a predatory form.
Okay, yeah, we were right. All right.
Looking for a minor because that's what attracted him. The fact he was only 16 at the time and was being homeschooled makes it completely plausible that the relationship began as some kind of intense online companionship where he was just happy to talk to someone, with age not being one of his concerns. I believe they started off as friends who confided in each other, made jokes, and wasn't started off in any inappropriate nature.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, bro, this is you have to be very, very careful of how you speak about a case like this. You know, I would say shout out to him for making a correction. I don't know what his correction is about to be. We're gonna find out, but
Now, looking back on it, I did all the research and analysis to come to this conclusion, but then didn't really go into enough depth to explain why.
Okay.
I kind of just made it seem like a casual observation and opinion, and rightly so, people contested it.
This is where I'm gonna have to disagree with this.
Oh shit.
When I was 16, I am not gonna wanna hang around no 11-year-old.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. Shit. Man. Oh my gosh.
No.
So what I want to do in this video is explore the two sides in a lot more depth.
Okay.
Because I really undersold the importance of this segment. Because if David just happened to stumble upon Celeste, saw her as a friend in his lonely world, and slowly graduated to a relationship, then that makes him seem more complex, and someone who went down a downward spiral into a predator. But if David sought out Celeste with the purpose of finding a minor specifically because that's what attracted him, then that makes him even darker than I first portrayed.
Okay, so we're going down the exact type of thing that I'm trying to boggle my mind around. All right.
Because if Celeste's age was the reason he killed her, and Celeste's age was also the reason he was attracted to her, then technically, this was a murder he'd set up for himself years in advance, which would then make the connection to his lyrics even more daunting.
Okay.
I wish I didn't have to say this, but I might have been wrong about David.
In what way, though? Wrong about him in what way, though?
So before I cover both sides, let's quickly go over the alleged timeline again for clarity. In
Please.
January 2022, a 16-year-old David makes first contact with 11-year-old Celeste, most likely through Fortnite. Throughout 2022 and most of 2023, the relationship remains online and there's no evidence of physical contact during this period. David blew up with music around this time, so he was getting a little fame and a good amount of money at this point.
Okay.
Now, something I didn't include in the main video were the reported other victims, mainly because I was focusing more on confirmed and reliable evidence. But during this timeline, there are messages that appear to be from June 2023, where David would have been 18, and he seems to be sending a breakup message to a girl who's 16 at the time. I'll get into this in more detail after, but
did I forget this? Did I forget
if this is true, then David did seem to have another relationship prior to meeting Celeste in person. 5 months after this, in November 2023, is when the prosecution alleges a sexual relationship between David and Celeste started. February 2024 is when Celeste was reported missing and law enforcement actually contacted David to inform him she's a 13-year-old runaway, to which he denied knowledge of her age and her whereabouts. He would then drive to her hometown Lake Elsinore and pay a classmate $1,000 to provide Celeste with a new phone. Another thing I didn't include because he's not always reliable is private investigator Steve Fisher's claims that he'd been in contact with another minor who he alleges had an illegal relationship with David at some point whilst David was still with Celeste. He claims he has photo evidence, but this has not yet been published, the age is unknown, and the victim hasn't come forward, so I just treated it as unverified context.
Okay.
And then on April 23rd, 2025 is when the prosecution alleges David murdered Celeste. First, I'm going to go over position A, which is my original position, that in January 2022, David wasn't hunting for a minor, but their online companionship escalated into sexual grooming as his psychology got darker and the power dynamic developed.
Also, in this position, and again, it literally does not make anything better if any position is like different. To me, he seems like somebody that'll be like, what would happen if I done this? Like, that's what I think an observational person does in terms of like study and hypothesis. And if this is the type of person that he is, what would happen if I do this? Will literally be like, bro. And I mean that in terms of like, if this is opportunistic and this turned into something, that's what I mean by that.
Social development was severely disrupted by 5 years of isolated homeschooling beginning at approximately age 13. During this period, his primary peer interaction occurred through Fortnite squad fields, an anonymous age-mixing gaming environment where age is not socially visible in the way it would be in a classroom or community setting.
Right.
He's described absorbing other people's problems through these platforms as the primary way he came to understand human psychology.
Like with Fortnite, I remember I found so many cool people just from that game I would have never met like in real life. So the ability to meet new people and see like how other people think, but it's like I'm taking this information and all these different people talking to me about different like problems and situations. I'm like, wow, this is really what humans are like these are humans.
If an adolescent is developed this way, where they're isolated from age-appropriate peer contact and using anonymous online platforms as a social substitute, research shows that they form connections that don't follow the age logic of a typical adolescent who was able to socialize properly or at least be in social environments. A 16-year-old who had no meaningful peer relationships for 3 years would be operating with a fundamentally different social framework than a normally developed 16-year-old. In anonymous online gaming environments, there's no way to actually know someone's age. Assuming they met on Fortnite,
you say this, of course you say this, but dog, you can hear somebody's voice and you can deduce that they're probably young as shit. She was 11. You can probably deduce that her voice sounds like a child.
Been able to judge it off was by hearing her voice. It's not always going to be easy to make an age judgment that way.
Bro.
I do obviously agree that upon finding out her real age, there's no excuse to be made for staying in contact with her.
Thank you.
From David's own claims, he was talking to many people through Fortnite and the contact just seemed to be formed around emotional openness. So if true, then it doesn't seem he was seeking out a minor specifically, but was looking for any social interaction he could get. And by the sounds of it, Celeste was happy to continue talking. Clinical literature on grooming doesn't require the initial contact to be one of predatory intent.
Okay.
Research by Craven, Brown, and Gilchrist identifies grooming as a process that frequently begins with genuine connection, particularly when the perpetrator has genuine emotional needs that the relationship initially meets and escalates over time as opportunity and power dynamic develop. Under this framework, David and Celeste's initial friendship may have been authentic, even whilst the later exploitation was clearly harmful. These are not mutually exclusive states.
Okay.
But now I'm going to move on to position B, the counter-argument that David's attraction and pursuit of minors reflects a deliberate sexual orientation rather than incidental opportunity, that he was socially aware enough to understand the significance of age as a category, and that the pattern of behavior across multiple alleged minors is more consistent with a targeted selection than a developmental confusion.
And even if A and B, and I honestly don't remember these texts, I ain't gonna hold you. However, it's not like he knew. It's not like he didn't know this shit was wrong. He was hiding her face how many times? A multitude of times.
The text messages I mentioned earlier, shared by an apparent 16-year-old girl, is the most significant evidence that changes my opinion. But now you see my issue with the original video. I can only make an analysis using credible evidence that I deem worthy of including in the video.
Right.
I can't say I have this opinion based on other evidence, but I'm not including that evidence.
Okay.
Because if I had used these messages in the original video, the easiest defense people would use is messages can be faked.
I understand that. But also, I remember when all of this was going on, I don't remember anybody saying these messages can be faked. When this first happened, I remember the video that we did. It was a lot of shit, bro. It was a lot. It was a lot, and everything was unfolding in real time. I don't remember seeing anybody saying the messages can be faked. What I remember is that, yo, I cannot believe that David, our beloved David, like that's how they were speaking. That's how people were speaking, did this. And everything was just unfolding day after day after day after day. Like,
If the prosecution were the ones to present those messages, then they're able to connect them to David's phone specifically and have it 100% proven.
Right.
These screenshots, however, come from a guy on Twitter saying the victim sent them to him and wishes to remain anonymous. As someone who prides himself in being clinically accurate and sticking with provable evidence, you can see why this didn't make it. However,
I can understand why that didn't make it. I can understand why they didn't make it in terms of like journalistic like integrity and stuff like that. And I also respect how he's like correcting anything and everything. I respect that.
For this video's sake, I think it changes the verdict and provides a lot more context, so it's at least worth considering. In these messages dated June 14th, 2023, David explicitly references the girl as still in school, with 2 years of high school left. He identifies the age gap as a stated reason why the relationship can't be publicly acknowledged, saying, "I'm barely in Texas. I believe long distance relationships work under the right conditions, like you being able to travel with me, etc. But you're still in school." With that also being said, I don't like hiding anything from anyone.
This is also a long ass text to be faked.
I would love to have a public relationship with someone, but the way this is going, it's like we have to be a secret or something. He frames her youth as an obstacle to a legitimate relationship rather than something he was unaware of. It demonstrates that David was socially conscious enough to register age as a legally and socially relevant category.
I mean, we already knew that. Look at the picture.
If he could identify and articulate the age-related problem of a 16-year-old girl, the argument that he was oblivious to do it for an 11 or 13-year-old girl becomes very difficult to sustain. Another point that is also strong was actually made by YouTuber Gideon, who reacted to my video.
There is a strong pipeline from people that watch gore videos to people that start consuming CSAM material.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. It's a weird fucking pipeline, bro. Son, like, the world is evil. You can't... The world is evil. You can only... If you live in... Or I would say if you think about... And... Honestly, in terms of like... I think I overreacted. But in terms of like stuff... Like, I'm going off of the do I call it research? I'm going off of me finding out about the nth room, like I said before, and the Telegram chats and all these things. It's like, it wouldn't make sense. It would not make sense that somebody who taps into gore is just watching, say, like gang violence. You know what I'm saying? Cause I remember back in the Chirac era, where literally, or in the NY drill era, where we were seeing people get shot in a Uber dash cam, or like people dying in 2012 and stuff like that. I don't think people consider that gore. But that was like on top of some of the things that were coming out. And coming to the knowledge that there is a whole nother world in this PDF stuff. And again, the nth room and all this stuff, your brain will probably think like, bro, there's no way that young girls are not getting assaulted like this and are the main things that are fueling gore. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense for something to be like this niche. No, because it's like this thing is so niche, but it's layers to it. It's literal layers to it. Because there's no way. There's no way there's a form of people just fucking just dying. And the CSAM thing is not a prevalent thing, bro. Because there are freaky ass people who get off to stuff like that in a sexual way. And you know this. It's literally being told to you in your face. You don't even have to watch it. I don't watch that bullshit. But after finding out about fucking like that shit fucked me up, bro. That shit really fucked me up. So you can literally deduce that, whoa. There's no way that he was just watching niggas dying. There's no way that was just what he was watching. There's no way. There's no way. Like, ugh.
It is an
And also, I don't know what the hell Gideon is seeing. I know he does like predator catches, and he's been doing predator catches for like years and stuff. I hope what he's doing is real, because I remember when Pretty Boy Fredo was like under fire for doing fake predator catches, all of this shit. Like, I don't engage in that content. I just know that he's doing this now.
canny pipeline like none other. If you are a person who is just absorbing and watching gore content, there is a strong likelihood that you will end up into CSAM material.
I believe it. I believe it. Stuff like this, you can't just like stumble upon and just keep watching it and 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 thinking that you're not going to come across some crazy shit. I don't believe that. I don't believe there's no way, because this is something that's very fucking crazy and damn near illegal. This shit is illegal. So if you start tapping into some shit that's illegal, imagine what the fuck you gonna get into in year 5 of doing this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro.
His argument that gore addiction can be a pipeline to consumption of prohibited sexual content.
And I'm saying it can be, because I'm just thinking of the subtle shit that is like in media, bro. Like, what is it in Euphoria? Like, what was it? Cassie in Euphoria got a baby bib in her mouth and shit like that, and that shit is literally being pushed on HBO Max. Like, come on, my nigga. Come on, Slim. Come on, bro. Come on, my nigga. Like, what are we doing? You don't think that people are pushing? And I think Sam Levinson's a freaky ass nigga. You don't think that they're like trying to seep in PDF stuff? Have you seen, like, if you actually pay attention and you see how it's being shown, how some of this stuff is being shown in the media and like infantilization and all this other stuff, you mean to tell me if you go into like some dark deep web shit and you in a gore or on Live Leak or something, you mean to tell me that stuff's not going to pop up? And the fact that you're engaging with it, like seeking this out, you think you're not gonna, you know what I'm saying? And this is like after you come across that random video that you like, what the hell is that? Let me click this. You just keep going and going and going and going. That pipeline is real, bro. Like, that shit is real, son.
Is indeed supported by research. The escalation model, in which individuals who seek increasingly extreme content to maintain the same stimulation threshold progressively migrate towards more prohibited categories, is documented in the clinical literature on compulsive pornography consumption.
Yes, bro.
And has been applied to extreme content consumption more broadly.
And this is why porn is really fucking bad, bro. And I'm not saying this in terms of like the people who want to do it. I'm talking about the industry in the darker senses. In the deep, darker senses. And, you know, I keep saying, like, I got friends in the OnlyFans business, all these things. But there is an underworld that is under that underworld. You know how like there's like the World Wide Web the deep web, and then the dark web, I think of it as an iceberg. And that dark shit is seeping in. And it's been seeping in, bro. It's been seeping in. Like, why the fuck is this on fucking Euphoria where they know millions of people are trying to... What the fuck? Why does Cassie have a bib on? Or a binky in her mouth? Why is she do...
Its own Discord statements describe exactly this escalation dynamic in relation to gore, the initial shock response, then habituation, then laughter, and then the deliberate use of extreme content to sustain the desensitizing effect. Whether this pattern extended to sexual content involving minors can't be confirmed by the public record alone. However, the prosecution references CSAM as evidence to be presented at the preliminary hearing, described as photos depicting Celeste engaging in sexual activity from as young as 13. This confirms CSAM exists in the case, but whether it's purely in relation to Celeste, or whether he sought out other videos of other minors online is something we do not yet know. But even then, this escalation pathway argument still doesn't prove a predatory intent at the point of initial contact in January 2022. Although he watched gore at 14, we need evidence that he consumed CSAM between then and first contact with Celeste to make a suggestion that minors became his choice of sexual orientation.
But how?
It's entirely possible that he got with Celeste in a friendly nature, and at some point after initial contact, he started consuming that material and then turning those twisted fantasies onto Celeste, which would...
I feel like we're going to see a lot of shit in this trial, and a lot of shit's going to come out. Like a lot. Explain
why he then pursued a sexual relationship. However, a single relationship with an age gap, despite it still being problematic, is categorically different from a pattern. If we are to believe those text messages, and even to believe Steve Fisher's claim that there was another minor involved in a relationship with David, then it showed he had a pattern of pursuing girls who were underage. The thing is, the relationship with the 16-year-old when David was 18 is actually legally covered by the Romeo and Juliet law. The messages showed David saying, "I'm barely in Texas, I believe long-distance relationships work under the right conditions, like you being able to travel with me, etc." So this suggests that the girl was from his hometown in Texas, whilst at the time he was traveling around the country for performances and meetings or whatever. Texas does indeed enact the Romeo and Juliet laws, which...
Well, also, something being lawful doesn't, like, negate moral culpability, but okay.
Allow sexual relationships between teenagers to continue without it being illegal. The criteria include they are no more than 3 years older than their sexual partner. Their sexual partner was at least 14 years old. The sexual relationship was consensual between both persons, and they were not already a registered sex offender at the time of the relationship. So first of all, we don't even have proof from these messages of any physical intimacy anyway, like we do with Celeste. That would just be an educated assumption. But then, even if true, these laws would have protected him. But the problem with these messages that I do have is his clear awareness of the relationship needing to be a secret. Now, the relationship would need to be a secret for two likely reasons. One would be either party or both of them wanting privacy, or two, because David knew that being an adult with a high school girlfriend would be perceived as weird. He hid Celeste as much as he could as well, showing a pattern of understanding the inappropriate age gap but pursuing it anyway. This makes any argument that David's social isolation made him unable to understand age gaps significantly weaker, because if at 18 he could understand a relationship with a 16-year-old would look bad, he obviously understood a 13-year-old would be even worse. But yet he still pursued Celeste and broke up with this other girl. And I mean, when you look at David in other domains, the fact he built a semi-successful gaming YouTube channel that made good money before music, the fact he was able to build such a big social media presence with tons of fans.
Go back.
Look at David in other domains. The fact he built a...
What the fuck does that say? Look at it. Read this. When stepsis is watching you play, what are you doing, step bro? So my stepsis asks what them fingers do. So either he's tapping into like this nasty stepbro stepsis meme, or he actually is aware of this shit. Like, come on, cuz.
Semi-successful gaming YouTube channel that made good money before music. The fact he was able to build such a big social media presence with tons of fans. The fact he was able to negotiate with big record labels. And the fact he was able to construct a multi-layered fantasy showed that David is far from lacking social awareness and social perception. Yes, he was homeschooled, but he still understood how society worked.
Right.
He still understood that being in a relationship with Celeste was not just wrong.
Right. Right. Like what?
So looking at both sides, where do I lie now in terms of my conclusion? David wasn't operating from a state of age blindness.
Jeez.
I do believe Celeste told him her age and he just rolled with it, because it wasn't like anyone would find out he was friends with an 11-year-old online. He understood it was wrong, as those later messages suggest, but as long as no one knew, he was fine to continue. I have to make that clear in case anyone misunderstood my previous analysis as me saying he became friends with Celeste thinking it was okay and perfectly fine. He knew it was wrong, but he was lonely and homeschooled, so he took what he could get. If no one his own age wanted to be friends with him, maybe due to him being emotionally stunted and coming across as corny, Celeste giving him attention would have outweighed the risk of him being caught talking to her.
That's predatory as fuck. There's a bunch of people your age. Nigga, keep trying. Keep trying to make friends your fucking age. Like what?
I still think the hardest part to assess is whether David was this predator, consuming CSAM and having sexual fantasies of minors prior to his initial contact with Celeste.
Even if it doesn't come out that he was an initial predator, what he was doing after the initial contact is predatory. So it's like, okay, your intention wasn't to be a predator, okay, but you still continued and you knew this was wrong. So you're still wrong. But if this is like a psychoanalysis, then I guess the main point of this video is to like see if it's nature versus nurture.
Or whether that developed after they'd already begun speaking, to which he then acted on when she turned 13.
I think it doesn't matter.
There's no evidence that's yet been documented of David showing other paedophilic behavior in those 22 months between meeting Celeste online and having with her. That distinction matters clinically, and it's one that the available evidence can't definitively settle until we get more evidence from the courts and the eventual trial. My honest intellectual position, incorporating the full evidence, including those messages and the claims that there were other minors, is that the original framing was partially correct, that the initial connection may have been genuine, but I overstated the degree to which David was operating without the awareness of what he was doing. He knew.
Okay.
The evidence shows he knew.
Right.
But what allowed him to proceed is where there's still room for us to debate this. Because in the original analysis, I stated that due to him wanting control, getting with someone younger made it easier to have a controllable victim. It made sense to me because he'd been controlled by his own parents and had developed narcissistic traits. So control was something
I wonder what they think about him now.
He craved, and he likely wouldn't have been able to control someone who was of age and headstrong, so he preferred to go for girls younger and mentally weaker. But other people seem to feel like it was pure sexual attraction to underage girls rather than that control aspect. But that's where the presence of him being 18 in a relationship with a 16-year-old during the same period complicates the picture. It suggests his attraction was not exclusively limited to young teenagers like Celeste, but may have been more broadly oriented towards younger, less powerful partners. Minors from unstable home environments, accessible through online platforms, financially dependent on him, and socially isolated by the relationship. They represent the controllability profile rather than the specific age-based attraction. That doesn't make the offending less serious, it just changes how you look at his psychology. The initial connection may have been genuine, but the escalation was not accidental. David understood what he was doing at each stage and chose to continue, managing the concealment that his own awareness of the problem required. Whether that constitutes a predatory orientation towards minors specifically, or a control-oriented pattern that targeted vulnerable young people irrespective of age, is a distinction the available evidence can't fully resolve, and acknowledging that distinction honestly is more intellectually rigorous than collapsing it in either direction. That's the honest answer. And honest answers, even when they complicate your own prior position, are what distinguish serious analysis from content that simply confirms what the audience already wants to believe. I hope that cleared up any confusion, as after seeing so many people leaving comments about that point, I wanted to make it more understandable to everyone. And as you can see, without including those text messages, it does make a significant change to the analysis. At the end of all this, whatever side you land on, there was still a young girl who was preyed upon at some stage by a guy she thought was a friend, was manipulated, groomed, and then killed when she tried to do the right thing. And the whole time, he knew exactly what he was doing. So once more, rest in peace, Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
Rest in peace to Celeste, bro. You did not deserve this. Secondly, I do say shout out to Jay Wisdom for making this correction. And I do like how he literally said, like, bro, regardless of what I said, I know it came off a certain type of way. Still fuck this nigga. Like, bro, fuck him. He knew what he was doing. He literally knew what he was doing. Because it's just like, you can't just be like, oh, why did he do that? Oh, but he knew. He knew, bro. He knew. There's no way around it. But one thing that I do think is that this trial is going to have a lot more stuff than what's being shown now. That's what I think, but we will see. But this was a good psychoanalysis. I'm gonna subscribe to this guy. He seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, and thank you, Jay Wisdom, for this. Y'all, please go check him out. This was very thought out. Even if he made a mistake, he corrected that shit. That's something that's not really. Damn, that's something that you don't really know about, bro. That's what's up, bro. That's what's up. At the end of the day, throw the book at this nigga. Throw the library at this nigga. I'm kind of scared of what's gonna come up in the actual trial, but he's done. Like he's done. Like there's literally no way around it. And if there is, I'm really going to be devastatingly surprised. Like for real. But this video has gone way too long. Not like I make long ass videos, but if you're still here, thank y'all for watching. I really would like to see what y'all think. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, I do want to say, like, in terms of catching signs, you really don't know unless something happens, unless you're really on top of things and don't have any type of tolerance for nothing. And if the risk of having some tolerance is the death of a young child, I think you should have that high tolerance, because there's no excuse. There's literally no excuse, bro. And especially finding out allegedly how they met, there's no fucking excuse, bro. There is none. There is none.